Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Football Focus. Catching, whatever that was. Where tonight we're going to discuss 2001. We're going to revisit 2001 and all the trophies that Liverpool won. We are joined by an Arsenal fan, so it'll be interesting to get some perspective on certainly the FA Cup final anyway, and that marvellous save by Stefan Oncho. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. So before we kick off, Dave, you've invited a couple of guests, so it's only fair that you pick them up, give them the intro they deserve, mate. I'll hand over to you for a second.
Well, during that famous year for us being Liverpool fans, we some people might remember that we played Wycombe Wanderers in the semi-final of the FA Cup. Wycombe Wanderers had a fantastic run in that trophy. Some unbelievable games. Leicester City, Wimbledon, that they won there, and Steve and Martin were both part of that Wycombe team. So, welcome to Steve and Martin. We're obviously going to talk about Liverpool, but it'd be good to get some insight on from some guys that were actually involved in a game against that side we had out during that season.
Excellent. Well, thanks for that. You're very welcome, gents. So enjoy yourselves this evening, and we go a little bit easy on the Arsenal fan, given the results of the FA Cup final. So we'll take it easy on you, Steve, I promise. So I think, from a Liverpool fan's perspective, I think the sensible place to start is to just talk about the man that made it all possible. That would be Gerard Houllier. We've done our own show before on Gerard Houllier, but it would be interesting to get some other fans' perspective of this man, because we feel, Dave, Ian and I, that this guy went a long way to starting to re-educate Liverpool to win trophies. So I'm kind of really keen to understand from you guys what you think about Gerard Houllier and how important of an influence was he on Liverpool, and in particular that season. So I'll start with Steve. Just your thoughts on Gerard Houllier, please, Steve.
Well, I thought he was different when he came to the English game. I remember speaking to Robbie Fowler after the game, and Robbie spoke about all the things that he'd stopped them doing, and drinking was one of them. But Robbie was determined to go to the bar after the semi-final and have a few beers himself. But I was fortunate enough to bump into Gerard Houllier. I went to the 2016 Euros out in France, and he was at the opening game. France played Romania in the opening game. And I managed to sort of have a picture taken with him and speak about that very game that we're discussing, the semi-finals. And he remembered it quite clearly and quite fondly, because that was the start of things when he started to win a few trophies at Liverpool. So, yeah, a real gent, a real sort of... I thought he would have spent more time at Liverpool, personally. But, he fell ill as well, didn't he? He had the heart attack. And things sort of panned out a bit different for him. But, yeah, a perfect gent. And sorry to see him pass away a couple of years ago as well.
I think before I come to you, Lito, for your views, you're quite right. I think we all expected him to stay longer at the club. You often find with Liverpool managers that stumble on a bit of success and need to sustain it, but they tend to overthink things, and then they lose the plot, and the football turns into something that is unrecognisable in terms of their brand. I think that's fair to say. We saw a little bit of that with Houllier. We certainly did with Benitez. So, in terms of that, yes, we would all love to have seen him stay for longer, because he was a gentleman, and I've listened to quite a lot of podcasts with Carragher and Gerrard of late, and they both name him as the reason why they are the footballers that they are today. So to you, Martin, just to get your thoughts on Gerrard Houllier, please.
Well, I met him that day as well, and he come across as a very quiet guy, and he obviously done great things for Liverpool, but like Steve said, him and Robbie Fowler come into the bar after, and what I loved about him was the fact he knew how big that occasion was for us. And he'd come over to every single player and say, "What you've done, it's fantastic." And he took the time to give us time, and he didn't have to do that. So, like Steve said, a gentleman, and what he achieved, especially that year for Liverpool, was. It was great. So, yeah, a good manager, a great manager, and a gentleman with it.
So, on to the first final that we experienced, and the one that falls first in the football calendar was the Worthington Cup final. Come to you, Ian. your thoughts on the game, your thoughts on Liverpool's performance, if you can remember back that far, and just give us what you're thinking about that right now.
Birmingham. A game going into, you thought we would have won easy, but it was one that turned out to be not that easy. They really turned up for the day. It was their cup final, wasn't it? It was a massive day for them. It didn't happen very often. I remember they had like a couple of good players as well there. Stan Lazaridis, who'd played at Blackburn. He had Andy Johnson, who went on to play for Everton and Crystal Palace. I think he missed the decisive penalty when we won on penalties. But Robbie Fowler's goal was the one thing I'll always remember from the game. But it wasn't an enjoyable game to watch as a Liverpool fan, because you always thought you were on the edge of maybe just going out. And it was another game where Stefan Ancho was allowed to do what he wanted in the box and not give a penalty away. So we want to thank Stefan Ancho for that. But it was a nervous game, Steve. But the end was all that mattered in the end, and we had the trophy and we lifted it.
Absolutely right, Dave. Similar to you, pal. Just obviously, bearing in mind the game, what do you think Twitter would have to say about that final?
Well, I think during the game, there would have been a number of tweets about the amount of chances we missed, because that's certainly what I remember from that. And by not finishing the game, pretty similar to this season, Stephen, a lot of games for Liverpool. So we didn't finish the game off, we didn't see it out, and therefore we left ourselves open to that late equaliser and therefore extra time, and we could easily have lost that final. So I think the majority of Liverpool Twitter users, in the end of that would have been a massive few. I think that's where it would have been in the end. So, but again, we should have put to bed probably during the first half, really.
I agree, and certainly from the Twitter point of view, all three finals would have broken the internet, wouldn't they, for different reasons? Yeah. They're not memorable for outstanding Liverpool performances in terms of taking the game away from the opposition and destroying them. They were too close for comfort. You're quite right, it was a very nervy game. Birmingham were always in that game, and obviously it went to the penalties. So that's the first one under the belt. Obviously, good place to start. Many successful managers. Jose Mourinho started with the League Cup win, if you recall, back in his Chelsea reign. So it all has to start somewhere. If I can just come to the two lads that played against Liverpool before we sort of go on and talk about the competitions. Martin, talk to me a little bit about the game itself, how you felt, your expectations, how the game transpired on the pitch. And then I'll come to you, Steve, with some different questions on that, if that's okay.
Expectations going into the game. We beat Leicester in the quarterfinals, who are a good Premier League side as well. So, although we probably didn't have any expectations, we beat Leicester in the previous round. So, I remember. Do you remember, Brownie? Do you remember the team talk by the gaffer?
Yeah, I've still got that on a video. Yeah, I do.
So, Laurie Sanchez was the manager, and his team talk that day was based around Roger Bannister doing the 4-minute mile, and basically the moral behind it was that it's never been done before, but like anything was possible. So he was basically saying, although no one had beaten a Premier League side in the semi-final, anything could happen. So that's. Although I didn't play on the day, I was sub, but I didn't manage to get on. I think that is how the lads approached that game. That although we didn't have much chance, there was always, you can never say never. We beat Leicester, so anything was possible, and we were hoping to stay in the game for as long as we could, and try and maybe nick a goal. But it wasn't to be, and they were a good side, and it wasn't our day. But I think we gave a good account of ourselves.
So, stay with you. Thoughts on the Liverpool side? What was it about them that you took away from the game? Because we've spoken to Alan Thompson, who used to play for Bolton and Newcastle, asked him the same question about when he played Liverpool in the League Cup final some years after that. But What did you take away from your experience playing against Liverpool on the day?
Me or Steve?
You, please, Martin. You.
So I thought as the game went on, I thought, we competed quite well. I remember warming up with, and Steven Gerrard was subbing. He come on at 0-0, and the lift that he gave the whole stadium and the whole Liverpool team when he come on, they just went through the gears. And I think he changed the game. Robbie Fowler for me was he had the best left foot I've ever seen, and he was such a good player. He was a big difference, and Michael Owen was so sharp at that time. This is before his injuries. He was so quick. But they had a lot of good players. I mean, they had Marcus Babbel, Patrick Berger, Gary McAllister. Real good Premier League players. Jamie Carragher was in his prime, so it didn't surprise me that they went on and won the treble that year.
It's interesting you say that about Gerrard, because obviously he's quite young at that stage, wasn't he? And we could not have seen the way his career was going to pan out. It's interesting that you said he gave the team a whole lift. Was he that dynamic? Did he make that much of a difference?
Yeah, I mean, he was young. I think he was probably 19, and he looked probably very different then. There wasn't a lot of him. He was tall but quite skinny. And I just remember every time he went to warm up, the whole ground lifted. And then when he did come on, the whole team lifted as well. And having that reaction to someone that was so young and probably not played that many games there, you'd expect that from someone that had played, for 10, 15 years. But he was so young and he had that sort of impact coming on. He sort of changed the whole direction the game went in.
Excellent. Coming to you, Steve, similar sort of questions to you. Obviously, it's a big night for anyone to play, one of the big teams in the Premier League. How are you feeling going into the game? What was your thoughts of the game at the end of it? And talk to us a little bit about what you thought.
Well, I thought going into the game, it was strange because you just remember as a kid, FA Cup semi-finals and stuff like that. They were always big games for the fans, big games for other fans of the club because they wish their club had made it, sort of thing. But Sanch made a decision to take us away. So he took us to Spain for the week. So we never really saw the build-up in England of the club's biggest game in history. We never really saw the build-up throughout the week, but he thought that would unsettle us. But when you look to the average age of the side, I think we was all in our 30s. Majority of the team, apart from Ben, the fullback, Ben Townsend on the day, I think the majority of the team were in their 30s. So we didn't really see anything. We flew back in on the Friday, and the Saturday we had to be up at the Belfry, and then we didn't really see anything of it until we watched the Tottenham Arsenal game, which was from Old Trafford, which was the earlier game. Then we get on the bus and we start driving towards Villa Park, and then you can start seeing the crowds build up. And as soon as we got close to Villa Park, you could see the amount of fans, and that's when it started to feel like this is real. So the build up for us was pretty much really sort of, it wasn't anything great or daunting. It was just a normal build up to a game, but it wasn't until the bus pulled, down by Villa Park, you saw all the fans and them singing and everything, and the Liverpool fans. It was great. And then when we went out to look at the pitch, and the stadium was virtually full, and to see the whole end just full of Wickham fans was just amazing, absolutely amazing.
Can I just ask you a question, Steve?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Steve, how often did Lolly Sanchez mention Wimbledon, 89, 88?
He didn't really mention it. He didn't mention it. The strange thing I thought about that, and I did record it. I've still got the video of that team talk actually somewhere. But that was the one game he didn't need a massive team talk. That was the one game. The lads knew what they had to do. They didn't, and I thought the team talk sort of took some of them over the top. Where on the day, it's like we never got to the pace of the game. It's like we spent. It felt in the game, playing in the game. It felt like we were chasing all the time. Never got a foothold in the game. Never got a 5 or 10 minute spell in the game. And what I remember about that semi final was, or the whole cup run for Wycombe was, we scored a lot of goals from set pieces. Liverpool didn't give away any free kicks around there. They gave away one free kick around their box, and that was the only chance we really had. They didn't give away any corners, any real set pieces that were threatening. So, I don't think we scored many goals that season, Martin, in open play. I think most of our goals came from very much Wimbledon-esque style. So it was always going to be a tough game for us. But I echo what Martin said. The game up until 59 minutes was we were still in the game. Steven Gerrard came up and just picked the whole game up by the scruff of the neck. His pace of passing, the way he wrapped balls into the front guys, into Heskey, into Robbie, and then the movement from the midfield players, the running off the ball, the Gary Mack sitting behind in that holding role and allow Steve Gerrard to go and open his legs all over. It was great to witness that. And I always thought this guy would have a great career. His level of intensity in running, his endurance, his physicality for such a young lad in such a big game was there for everyone to see.
So you said something earlier, and I'd like to go back to that. Personally speaking, would you have liked to be involved in a big build-up? Would that have inspired you rather than going to Spain and sort of hiding away from the occasion?
Yeah, I think that's all part of it. That gives everybody. I think that's what sort of levels everybody. That's what everyone knows the importance of the occasion. Everyone knows what we have to do. I think the intensity of training would have been different. I think everything would have been different leading into that.
What about you, Martin? Do you have the same opinion?
I don't know. The Spanish trip was quite good, I thought.
Yeah.
With a few nights out. I think it. Am I right, Brownie, in saying it was something to do with the Sun newspaper? I think they might have paid for it.
I can't remember, to be honest.
Because there was a Sun reporter who travelled with us, and Brownie's right. I think we saw that being away from the country, we probably didn't see how important the game actually was. Maybe that's what the manager wanted to do. Maybe that was his idea behind it all. But as soon as on the coach, like Brownie said, as soon as you're on that coach and you're on the way to Villa Park, you sort of realised how big this was. For me personally, I was gutted not to play. I thought I might have had a chance of starting. I think I'm right in saying I might have scored the week before in the league, but I think he went with experience in the end, and I was left on the bench. But I was coming on at one point, and then Heskey scored, and then we had Guy Whittingham on loan. Remember Guy Whittingham?
Mm.
We had him on loan at the time, and he come on instead of me, so it wasn't to be. But it was a great day. I'll always remember.
Excellent. Thanks for that, guys. Some really good stories there. So on to the final itself. I can remember sitting watching until Michael Owen started to test the Arsenal back four, thinking, how many is this going to be? They're going to absolutely take us to the cleaners. They were sharping at us all over the pitch. They started really well. They got the front. I don't know about you, Dave. At one stage, I was thinking this could be 4 or 5 because they were absolutely bossing it, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned to you the other day, you and Ian the other day, Steve, that I played cricket as well. So FA Cup final, I never watched an FA Cup final from about the age of 30 probably until, but it just so happened that my oldest son had been born the previous year. I decided to have a year off from playing cricket. And so that was my first cup final for, what would I have been then? I'd have been 27. 27? Yeah, 27. So that was my first cup final for about 14 years. I'd actually watched live at the time. And I remember sitting there watching it and thinking, I watched it with a group of mates. Martin knows full well, because we had this discussion last night, that I'm not a big fan of watching football in pubs. I watched it in a social club just down the road from me here. And it was hideous. It was split pretty much 50-50 Arsenal and Liverpool fans, believe it or not, in leafy Surrey. And yeah, I remember thinking, this is a disaster. Why have I not played cricket this season? this is going to be horrific, sitting here watching us getting turned over. So, but as it turns out, Ian alluded to it already. Stefan Honcho, when we first time ever in a cup final, anyone's played two goalkeepers at the same time, because he made two absolutely wonderful saves from memory, Stefan Honcho, and Michael Owen was at the very, very top of his game. He was in that period. If you listen to the Robbie Fowler podcast that he's done, he says that he was at the top of his game about that time, and he was almost on the wane, which is incredible to think. How old would he have been then? Like 21, I think. So and he was on the wane, which is unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, he had the world at his feet, didn't he, Michael Owen, at that time? And pretty much with a little bit of help, with a helping hand, or every pun intended, by Stefan Honcho. I mean, he basically won that cup final on his own.
Absolutely. I listened to Thierry Henry's podcast recently, and he's still scarred by Onjo's save. Still a problem for him to get his head around that. So he mentions it quite a lot. Coming to you, Ian, quickly on this one. Michael Owen gets involved. We score 2 goals. Controversial question. For the second one, do you think the Arsenal keeper can do better?
Well, funnily enough, I didn't watch this cup final live. I was working, getting myself through uni. So I was working in quick save, stacking shelves, and we had the match over the tannoy in the supermarket. So obviously I came home, watched the highlights because we won. And Siemens, for me, when he was on his game, but there was a lot of goals through his career where you thought he should have had them, and that was one of them. Steve, I still think a top class keeper as good as David Seaman should be saving that.
Safe hands, eh? Martin, did you watch the game, or was the experience of the semi-final enough to put you off it?
I remember that game. Yeah, I thought it was a great finish by Owen. I thought he took it early and caught him off guard a bit, Owen, for that goal. That was when Owen done the celebration with his hands, wasn't he? He rubbed his hands together.
Done a little cartwheel. No, that was a different one. Done a little cartwheel. That one with run hands together was to do the gangster in Liverpool. So that very quickly got rid of that celebration.
Right. Yeah, but I watched that game, and it's a shame that my lad's 9 and he loves football, but FA Cup's not as important anymore like it was back then. FA Cup final day was like a big thing, but now it seems that it's not as big anymore, which is a shame. But yeah, I remember that game well.
I used to get up in the morning and watch the whole thing, watch the League of Hotel. And then I don't know if any of you guys remember, they used to pick out one player. In Liverpool, I remember it being Dean Saunders one year, where he introduces you to the whole team. He tells you all about who's clever, who's dozy, who's funny, and all that stuff. That was part of the experience, wasn't it? What's happened to that? Steve Brown, what's happened to that? Why did you lost all that?
Well, I think that went with the introduction of the foreign manager, where actually it was about the squad, it was about rotation, it was about finishing as high as you possibly could. Also, with the Premier League money for high finishes, that's where it became a priority. And also, it not being losing the European place. If you won the FA Cup, you always used to go into the Cup Winners' Cup, didn't you? Whereas now, that's no longer the place. So I think a lot of clubs don't take it seriously, not as serious as it used to be. I mean, it meant a lot to a lot of managers. I thought when Mourinho came to England, he showed the FA Cup competition a lot of respect, and the League Cup, because he wanted to win trophies, and that's what he set about doing. I think Pep was the same as well. They've shown the cup competitions in England a lot of respect by wanting to win them. It's a shame that some of the other clubs don't take that as seriously. I mean, at one stage they spoke about the winners having the Champions League place, didn't they? That would have totally changed the seriousness of the competition if that had been the case. But it's a great trophy, renowned all around the world. So, cup final day, that's shown in something like 50 odd countries. That's how big it is.
Yeah, I agree. We had a conversation recently on a recent pod. If you offered a Liverpool fan 4th place or the FA Cup, Ian was the only one who was streamed on the show that said he'd take the FA Cup over 4th place. So it's interesting there are still people that believe in the romance of the FA Cup over the belief of, say, the Champions League. So back to the game itself. Your thoughts on the game, Steve? You were an Arsenal fan.
No, I'm a Forest fan. The last British
Okay.
club to win the European Cup back to back. Just so I get that in there.
You want to get that in there, didn't you? So your thoughts on the game?
I enjoyed the game.
You enjoyed it?
Yeah, I enjoyed the game. I enjoyed the game from the perspective that Arsenal were an exciting team. They had so many good players. Ray Parlour used to just be the energy of that team, as well as, it was just a great team. And there were some greats across the years that played for Arsenal when they dominated the English football. Some real top players. But I enjoyed it. But, Liverpool, Michael Owen at that time, 1v1s, there was no one better, running past players. And I remember Tony Adams trying to catch him and him cutting in he was on the wrong side and opening his body out and putting that one across the seam to score the winner. I just thought that was a great way to turn a cup final around. I mean, Liverpool fans, having had their day in the semi-final, probably thought that was going to be on the end of something. But to then come away in the last 5 or 6 minutes to win it was just the best way to win a cup final, if you ask me.
Well, and you're right with that pace and the sharpness of Owen, because he really was electric, wasn't he?
God,
you always in the game, you always had a chance for something like that. It's interesting because in the Weddington Cup final, Owen didn't start, Fowler did instead. And then the roles reversed for the second two parts of the treble. I'll ask you, because obviously you've been around those guys, you've seen them play. Who's harder to play against? Fowler's cleverness and the left foot, or Owen's directness and the pace?
I would say pace. I think there's no substitute for that. I think, at any level, I look at Mbappe. I saw Mbappe 2016 when he played for France as a 16-year-old in the under 19s tournament, and no one could cope with his pace. And I still watch him now, and his pace just absolutely terrorizes people. Yes, he's got skillful ability and he's got a great touch, but when he wants to be just direct, he's gone. You're not catching him. So I think pace there's no substitute for pace in the game.
Absolutely not. No, and he's a prodigious talent, isn't he? And hopefully, he'll get moved to a big club like Liverpool. Cough, cough, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And we'll see that come to fruition. So on to the third game, and the one that was the really exciting game. Went to the golden goal. Nobody really knew what the hell had gone on when it was a guy called Jelly or Melly or someone who headed the ball into his own net, wasn't it? Come to you, Dave. European Cup final of sorts, chance to do the first of a type of treble in English football, in terms of that. What are your thoughts on the game, on the performance, on the result?
I've got a little bit of a story behind this one as well. So I was playing football still then, obviously, and we had a game that night, and it was moved to be a 6:15 kickoff, and we played. By the time I literally, this is terrible, by the way. Like, anyone that's been involved in football will know how terrible this is. But basically, I drove home in my kit, no shower, straight off, right. Got back home to watch the game. We were 2-0 up. And I'd listened to it on the radio coming back as well. It wasn't far away, the game was only like a 15-minute drive. So I'd listened to that as well, and I was thinking this is going to be a cricket score. We're going to, like, Alaves were just a team that had come from nowhere, weren't they? They're unbelievable. I think who was the striker? Yadi Moreno, was it? I think.
Yeah.
He just shot onto the scene and scored bundles of goals from that year. I think Jordi Cruyff was in their team as well. And I thought we were going to blow them away, and I was fully expecting to get in, sit down, and just revel in. Well, we've already said about it. We'd had 2 previous finals that have been a bit hard work, and I thought this is going to be different. We're going to end up romping this, and it's going to be enjoyable. And how wrong could I have been? Unbelievable. I mean, I think Alaves, in credit, fair play to them. I think credit where credit's due. That's why they got themselves to the final. I mean, they clearly had a spirit about them and had a threat about them as well. I mean, they're just literally. They're like that bloke that you always hear about. That people say if you're going to fight him, you better make sure you kill him because otherwise that's the only way you're going to stop him. And that's exactly what Alaves were like. So, yeah, it was hard. And then, to be honest with you, golden goal was a pretty new thing. I'll be right in saying that might have been it had come in the previous year's Euro 2000, something like that.
Yeah.
And obviously quite a short-lived thing as well. Probably only hung around for another few years after that, and gone. Whether that's for the better or not, I don't know. But that was all very surreal as well. You know, the guy heads it in his own net from Gary McAllister's free kick. So yeah, very very surreal end to what probably should be described as a very surreal game, Steve.
I agree. Steve, did you watch the game? Did you watch the final?
I think after the FA Cup final, I went on holiday. I don't think I watched any football after that. I was still reeling from the FA Cup semi-final loss. I didn't take that too well, to be honest.
Oh, that's tough to deal with.
Yeah, it was. It was.
Would have been a hell of an experience to get to a final, wouldn't it? You know, it would have been sort of. It's still an experience to have got to where you got to be fair. But I appreciate, you know, you're that one game away from an FA Cup final, which, you know, would have been without doubt the highlight of your career. I'm sure. You know,
absolutely.
Difficult to say. All right. Well, I was going to ask you about the game. If you were lying on the beach somewhere drinking San Miguel, then we won't do that because we won't get much from you. So, Ian, your opportunity to share with us your view. Don't tell us you're in quick save sack yourselves, please.
No, I watched that game and I enjoyed it. It was an exciting game. I went into the game pretty much thinking the same way as going into the Birmingham game. I thought, we'll get this done. It'll be pretty easy. Nice and done. No problem. Yet again, Liverpool go and put me hard through the ringer. I don't know about you guys, but when Liverpool scored and that golden goal went in, I was watching it with my dad and I was like, have we won now? Is that how the golden goal works? Have we won? And it was like a hesitation for about up to 2 minutes going, have we won? Or did we kick off again? Or it was like a VAR decision state, to be honest with you. It was nuts. But yet we won, we lifted the cup, and I went to the crazy house and got drunk.
Excellent. Martin, Steve's just told us after the FA Cup semi-final experience, he went on holiday and didn't watch the UEFA Cup final. Did you see it? Did you see the game?
I'll be honest, I don't remember it, I'm afraid. I'd like to say I did, but I don't remember it. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Absolutely fine. In terms of, we'll talk a little bit about Steve and Martin, about your careers. Obviously, you've nominated Steve and Gerrard as a standout performer. Who else, Steve, from your point of view, did you watch and think, wow, that player's got something a bit special? Because you obviously played against Leicester, you've obviously played against other teams of a higher ranking than your own in competitions. Who else is somebody that, looking back on your career, you think what a player that was?
Gaza. When we played Middlesbrough in the League Cup, when it used to be 2 legs, which was great. I thought it was a great competition that when it was over 2 legs. And playing against Gaza, he was just something else. You know, to see him up close and live and playing against him actually was tough. He was a tough player to play against. I think the only thing I knew I could do with Gaza was outrun him. And that's what I spent most of the game doing, was running off him. But he was an exceptional talent. Exceptional.
What about you, Martin? Anyone for you, Martin, that springs to mind?
For me, Muzzy Is It was some player. I thought he was so quick in his mind what to do with the ball before he received it, and he was always 1 or 2 steps ahead of everyone else. Muzzy Is It. I mean, pre-season played against a few top players, but it's pre-season, so you
He's struggling with his broadband there, isn't he? So that's probably the 4th time we've lost him. Okay, so we'll move on a little bit. Just wanted to get Steve's thoughts on Southgate's selection for his Euro 2020, not 2021 squad. What's your thoughts on his team?
I quite like him. I like the fact that we've got so many. I've worked with a lot. When I was at England, I worked with a lot of those players when they were in the development teams. I remember seeing Phil Foden at 14, and he was an exceptional talent then. So I'm quite excited about. I think it's a squad that can grow, and I don't think he's just picked this squad with the Euros in mind. I think he's picked it with the World Cup as well, because actually it's an experience for some of those players. I know Ollie Watkins missed out. We had a discussion about him earlier. Ollie Watkins missed out, but I'm excited by the squad. I mean, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, he's had a great season, and deserves to be on the plane to go. And I think he brings something different. I think I think it would have been unfair for us to load everything onto Harry Kane and put it all on his shoulders. But I think I'm quite excited. I'm quite excited by that squad.
He's an interesting one to mention, Calvert-Lewin, because obviously when he signed for Sheffield United and went to Everton, he was by far from the finished article. You have to give credit where it's due. He's worked really hard at his game. He's focused on what he does well. He's obviously worked on being a bit of a target man with Duncan Ferguson, because he is a bit of a target man. So I think you're quite right. I think he warrants his position.
I think Ancelotti's got him working more between the 6-yard box, the width of the 6-yard box when balls are coming in, rather than doing all the work outside it. So I think Ancelotti's been a real big part of his development over this year.
Excellent. Welcome back, Martin. We've moved on a little bit now. Just touching base on Gareth Southgate's squad. Steve's been giving us his rundown there on. He's quite excited by it. What are your thoughts on his selection?
I'd like to have seen Lingard go. Just because I think of the form that he's shown for West Ham, and that's not me being a West Ham fan. I genuinely think he should have gone. But I think the squad's exciting going forward. I think we've got some great players and exciting players. It's a shame I think that Grealish has got his injury when he did, because he was flying up until then. I still think he'll have a big part to play, but it would have been nice for him going to the tournament fully fit and, on the back of 10, 15 games where he was producing the same form that he has done in the beginning of the season. But I'm excited. I think we've got a real good chance without getting too excited, of course.
Is it a little bit of a risk, in your opinion, to take Maguire, because we don't know how fit he is? My personal view on him is positional sense is questionable at times, and he'll need his fitness to recover that. So, is that a risk to take him? Should we maybe have done a bit more with him and thought about another option? Because we've tried taking injured players to tournaments before, and it doesn't work, does it?
Who would you have taken, Steve?
You think we should, Brownie?
I'm just asking, Steve. Who would you have taken instead?
It is difficult because we're not blessed with a plethora of sort of really strong defensive partnerships. I think Tarkowski at Burnley's had a decent season. He's probably a little bit more mobile than Harry Maguire. I think Lewis Dunk's probably a little unfortunate to miss that as well, because he's a commanding centre half. If you're going to play a central defensive partnership with Harry Maguire, and you need pace. If you're going to play a central defensive partnership with Lewis Dunk, and you need pace. So for me, the formula doesn't change. But what you've got there is someone who isn't unfit, and I've spoken to many Manchester United fans. Harry Maguire doesn't always recognise danger, and that's why you can get in behind him, because he takes up positions when he's coming out with the ball that put the space in behind him as an option for the opposition to play in. So if there's a question mark about his fitness, for me, it's a really high-profile part of the pitch for it to go wrong, for it to break down. I think Tarkowski counts himself lucky not to have been included. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think you look at the sides like Burnley and Brighton. Brighton have had a reasonable season themselves, but they're the ones who probably spend a lot of the games or the bigger games without the ball, so the defenders get a lot of action and a lot of sort of football action. So yeah, I think Tarkowski would have been one I would have thought about.
So, Martin, what do you think about risking Maguire and his fitness? Is that calculated risk? Does he know more than well, obviously he knows more than we do? Would that mean he's a lot closer to being able to play in games than?
he can't be far away if he's taking him. He can't be far away from being able to play. But I think that's the position where we fall the shortest. Really, I don't think we're blessed with great centre halves at the minute. If you go back 10 years, you had Terry, you had Ferdinand. You had some of the best ever. Now I think that's probably where we're going to fall. Or if we fall short, we might fall short there. But I like Tyrone Mings. I think he's a good player. I think he'll play if Maguire if Maguire's not fit.
That's a good shout. I mean, obviously towards the end of the season, a couple of high-profile errors. He started the season so well. Got caught out a couple of times, but let's be honest, happens to every single central defender in the world, doesn't it? Happens to the very best of them. Dave Powell, thoughts on selecting 4 right backs?
Well, funny enough, Martin and I discussed this last night, amongst a few other things about the squad. So I'm actually all right with it, to be honest with you, in the fact that I know Trippier can play the other side. I know James and Walker can both play right side centre back in a 3, which I think is probably Southgate's preferred option. And Trent could. I think just regarding Trent, number one, I can't believe it was ever up for debate that he was going to make the squad. I mean, I know Martin agrees on that. I'd imagine that Steve probably does as well, being a football man. So I mean, scandalous to people wherever. I mean, I just think it was. To be honest with you, I think it was people just trying to fill column inches in newspapers and websites. So I don't think there was anything more to it other than that. I think he was probably always going to go. At the end of the season, we've discussed it, Steve, Ian. Trent was fantastic for us. He did have a blip before that. And if we're going on form alone, he was probably quite right to miss out on the England squad's last round of games because his form wasn't good at that time. But he's come back very strongly. If we're playing wing backs, I can't believe. I'll be honest with you. My opinion, I can't believe there's anybody better in Europe than Trent Alexander-Arnold as a right wing back. And I include Reece James in that. I just think I've been saying it for a while now. I don't understand why they wouldn't do that. Reece James is he's a better defender than Trent. So why not play him as your right side centre back? Trent plays alongside him there, and then I think that just makes that really strong. I think you've got a lot of pace, you've got a lot of ability, and it's a place where you can start a lot of attacks. We've got Steve's already said about Harry Kane up front. I mean, there's differing opinions on this pod about Harry Kane, but I think he's a fantastic player. I think he does great things when he plays for England, and we've got the likes of Mason Mount, Grealish, Rashford, Sterling, Sancho. I mean, we've got some great options. Calvert-Lewin, great options going forward. So, and
Bellingham as well.
Bellingham, yeah. I mean, it's so many good options. So many good options. So, and particularly, I think Trent is a great crosser of the ball. But if you've got people like Harry Kane and Calvert-Lewin in the box, you want to be putting crosses in the box. So why wouldn't you have him in there? So I don't have too much of an issue with the 4 right backs because I don't think it's as static as having 4 right backs.
No,
I think there's a bit more to it.
Ian, before I come to you on the front line, I just want to ask Steve and Martin a question from a footballer's perspective. Kyle Walker's played the right side of the central 3 in defence in a tournament before. Does he get the vote over Reece James because he's played there before in a tournament of that pressure? And that whilst Reece James has done it, he's not done it consistently over a longer period of time?
I think it's unfair to compare the two when people say, he's not done it over a period of time. But, he's a lot younger and he's got less experience. But he's played a lot of games, Reece, at all different levels. At England development teams, he went out on loan and was outstanding at Wigan. Came back, did fantastic at Chelsea, and Chelsea have just won the Champions League. Has been a part of that. So he's got enough experience to play. So that right side, can he play there? Yes, he can. I don't think it's an easy position to play for him if he's as a natural fullback. And I think Kyle Walker struggles playing that as well, because actually there's more ground for them to cover than when they're a fullback, especially getting out to those wide areas. It's interesting, the European teams, when you watch them live, when they play against the three, how wide they make the pitch. And if I was a fullback, if I was playing in the three like John Stones, Maguire and Kyle Walker, they could get dragged all over the place quite easily. So it's not, three at the back is not a formation I'm overly keen with, especially if you want your fullbacks to play high and wide and get on and support the attack. I think, I prefer as England as a back four with two fullbacks who can get up and down, and someone sits in front of the back four holding role.
Like a Declan Rice, someone like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bellingham will play a little bit further forward. He's a bit more of a cleverer player, break the lines a bit and get into spaces and hopefully create a little bit.
Absolutely.
So I can see the logic behind that. What do you think, Martin? Are you in the same camp as Steve, that the three centre backs is difficult and it's difficult to pick the one to play at the right side?
I mean, I'd like to play with the four. That's what I'd like. That's what I prefer to see. But if you're talking about a back three, I think a big part of me would say Walker. But Walker's played there a lot, as we've said. What have England achieved? Maybe it's time to move on, and maybe it's time to have a bit of faith in these new lads, the younger lads that that have done great for their clubs. You look in midfield, and I think Henderson, when fit, I think he plays no matter what. But maybe Bellingham, on his form, he should be playing instead. Or maybe it's time to move on and try and look ahead instead of picking these players for what they've done in the past, because we haven't been successful as a country. So maybe it's time to play these players that have, shown so much ability for their clubs.
Okay. I'm going to ask you all now. Harry Kane will obviously be the first name on the team sheet from an attacking perspective. Ian, I'll start with you. Who plays left and right of Harry Kane for you?
I have to be honest with you, I don't really watch much of England, so I'd be tempted to just go with tried and tested. I'd go with Sterling on one side and Sancho on the other. I don't really follow England as much as you guys, obviously, so I do apologise for my answer there. But just because Sterling's played in tournaments before, and I know according to some people he's not having the greatest season, but I think he's a clever player. I think you need clever players, and he can earn a foul, and they're important in games like this, especially if you've got someone like Trent. At Trent plays, if you get yourself some free kicks around the box and get some set pieces in, I think they can be valuable for Liverpool, especially if Trent starts.
Okay, Martin, I'll come to you before I go to Powley. Same sort of setup, tactical setup. Obviously, it's Kane through the centre. Who goes right? Who goes left?
I would play Rashford on the left, mainly because of his pace. On the right, I'm not so sure. I'd probably go with Sancho, I think, on the right hand side.
Powley, your thoughts?
Well, I'm going to caveat mine a little bit, Steve, by saying I think this is probably what he will do. Not necessarily. I mean, I'm basing it on what I think he's good. I'm trying to second guess the manager here a little bit, which is probably not the right thing to do, because anything could happen, couldn't it? But with that in mind, I'd Rashford and Foden.
Okay, Steve.
You've just Dan, you've just sort of made me think about this a bit differently. I'd definitely go with Harry Kane. I'd go with Sancho one side, probably Sterling the other, and I'd play Foden behind Harry Kane. But I'd allow them to go and play free, so they can roam. So But then, I'm thinking about Mason Mount as well. God, there's another one.
It's difficult, isn't it?
We've got, the crazy thing is, we are talking about creative players now. I remember 10, 15 years ago, we were saying England doesn't have any creative players. We've got a dearth of creative players now. And I think it's an exciting squad for Gareth. And, I just hope that they get to a semi-final and we get the opportunity to go and play at Wembley in the semi-final of a major championship and get to the final. I think there's the incentive for us as a country to get to the semi-final and play at Wembley in front of the nation.
I saw England's team for tonight before I came on. He's playing Jack Grealish as a 10. I've said many times that could be the making of Jack Grealish. I think he's a guy who wants to be on the ball all the time. He's got stamina to burn. Never going to let you down. That's his work rate. Thoughts on that as potential? Because obviously you've just named Foden. Mason Mount would be in his count for that position too. Where does Grealish fit in terms of as a 10? Because he doesn't play it for his club.
I think he can play there. I think he can comfortably play there. I think he goes into areas that causes you problems. I think Foden does. I think Sterling does. I think Sancho does. I'm quite excited about this. I'm quite excited about England in this tournament. If it was a World Cup, I might have felt a bit different. But I think because it's a European thing and the best players play in the Premier League, I think it's going to be it's an exciting Euros for us. I'm expecting exciting Euros.
Can we win it?
I think we've got so many creative players that on their day they're all match winners. There's not often we've had loads of match winners available in our starting lineup. Goals can come from anywhere. With the squad is picked.
Can they do the unthinkable and trump France? Do you think England could come out with that winners and France not win it?
Well, just having sort of glimpses at the Wales-France game, France are always exciting. They're always an exciting proposition. They've won the Euros. They've won the World Cup. They keep producing, reams and reams of good teams. And it's going to be tough. If you're going to win it, you're going to have to beat the best teams. And there's no reason why we shouldn't go and beat France. If we're going to win it, we're going to have to beat France.
I think I'm right in saying they've got an incredibly tough group as well, yeah? France? Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, but they've got enough quality.
They're not in with oh, God, yeah. But you've only got to get one bad result, and that can be the end of you, can't it?
Yeah.
Who's in France group, Dave?
I'm sure, I might be wrong, but I'm sure they're in a group with something like Germany and Italy, I think. I might be wrong.
I couldn't correct you on that. I do know they've got a difficult group, but I couldn't correct you on that.
I know there's one horrific group, I know that.
I think there'll be a lot of teams that won't want to play us.
I mean, our group's tough. Our group's tough as well.
Are you looking for it now, Dave? Is that what you're doing?
I am, yeah.
It's also because for years and years...
France, Germany, Hungary, Portugal. Sorry, Mark.
Oh, God.
That's a tough group.
Yeah.
That's a tough group. But I think I'm right in saying as well, again, you guys can correct me on this, I think there are some third places up for grabs in these groups to go through, isn't there?
Yeah, there are.
Because there's six groups.
Best finished third places, isn't it?
Yeah. Which could easily be in a group like that, couldn't it?
Yeah.
You could have 3 teams with 6 points or something easily in there.
So before we close, I'm going to ask the guests the same question I ask all the guests, because I like to get their answers. I'll start with you, Martin, and it's the age-old question you see bouncing around the internet all the time. Lampard, Gerrard or Scholes?
Scholes. Scholes for me. Probably because he sort of defied everything, like his physicality. He wasn't the tallest or the strongest, but he could hurt. He scored goals. He could run games. He could, he'd sit in midfield and control the pace of games. Yeah, for me, Paul Scholes was the best midfielder. But you're going to say Gerrard, I know.
I'm going to ask Steve the same question.
I'm going to go Gerrard. Very much like Scholes, a one-man club. There was times when he could have gone to Chelsea. There was times when things weren't great at Liverpool. I remember that cup final he played against West Ham when he won that game for them. Went to extra time. I've still got that on DVD. That's one of the best cup finals I saw. And that performance sort of epitomised everything that kid's about. Energy, drive, motivation, ability to score goals, ability to tackle, just everything. I just think he's an all-round complete player, all-round complete midfield player for me, and showed his loyalty to the fans as well by staying where he could have gone and won a few more things. He would have, if he'd have left Liverpool, he would have won a Premier League, no doubt, because he would have gone to Chelsea and he would have strengthened their side. But I don't think. I think it's all the things that sit around Steve Gerrard for me. That's why I like him. Why I'd say him as well.
Excellent. Well, thanks both for coming on and sharing your thoughts with us on your experiences in the semi-final of the Cup and talking a little bit about your careers and ultimately finishing with a little bit on England. That was good. A bit unexpected, but good. Good to get your insight. You're very welcome to come back on anytime you like. Thanks to Ian and thanks to Dave, as ever, for coming on and joining us. And yeah, for those of you that have watched and might watch retrospectively, thanks for tuning in and take care of yourselves.
No worries.
Cheers, guys. Cheers.
Cheers, fellas.
Bye.